Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone from around the world. We got people from Europe. We got people all the way to the Hawaiian Islands and throughout the nation. And really, really excited to kind of bring this all together over the last 3 weeks with Dr. Dixon. And, first and foremost, I want to say, Brian, thank you for your time. This is incredible for us. Everyone is getting a massive benefit, tremendous value. People have been bombing into the YouTube channel, reviewing them, sharing these videos, these links, and it's just given us a totally different insight than where we currently were, and the belief level has gone through the roof. And so it was interesting as we sent out, I don't know what's going on here. As we sent out, a lot of this information, what was beautiful is I always ask, hey guys, what would you like to hear next? And the biggest thing that came back in a wave, more so than any other thing or any other product that we have on our docket, is how do we tie a bow around Nrf1, Nrf2, and NAD? How do they truly synergistically work together? We've got some huge breakthroughs that you brought to the table with regards to what that looks like. And I'm just super, super excited to turn this time over to you so we can dissect that massive part of the Synergizer, putting a bow, and why do they really, really work together synergistically. We see the huge benefits individually, but we would love your insight with regards to what you've discovered, and then we'll take this out to the world. So Brian Dixon, thank you for all you do. He's the Vice President of Product Development. He's been a massive arrow in the quiver for LifeVantage. I'll turn it over to you, buddy.
Yeah, excuse me. Thanks again for having me, you guys. It's such a pleasure to be with you. I think we're starting to hone in on the time and the week, giving people more notice, but just wonderful to see so many of you all on here. So yeah, today's topic, the Synergizer. So exactly like Rye said, we're going to be putting together kind of the last 3 weeks worth of content. I think it's a really cool story. I've been in this specific nutritional space for about 13 years, and I've frankly never seen a scientific story that's so powerful like it is the one centered around Synergizer. So let's talk about it. And just to really start from the beginning, in case you're not familiar, but the Synergizer actually consists of all 3 members of the Protandim family of products. So that's Protandim Nrf2 Synergizer, Protandim Nrf1 Synergizer, and Protandim NAD Synergizer. So like I said, we're going to be putting together kind of the last 3 weeks that we've been talking about the products individually, but also that whole concept of nutrigenomics, right? Utilizing nutrients in the right way, the right dose, the right forms, the right ratios to activate these different cell signaling pathways so that we can turn on all of these hundreds, if not thousands of different health promoting genes. So here is one of the schematics of how Nrf2 is actually working inside of our cell. So normally you can see at the top there, Nrf2 is anchored to a protein that's called KEAP1, and that's on the outside or the outer cell membrane. So still inside of the cell, but on the outer cell membrane. What happens is normally Nrf2 is off. So its default position is off because it's anchored to that protein KEAP1. What happens is there's a really interesting chemical bond between KEAP1 and Nrf2. And again, I know I'm getting into some pretty deep science here, but this is all just for background for you guys, just for your information. So remember, you don't have to be a little scientist, but just so you get a little better understanding of how this is all working. Anyway, KEAP1 is anchored to Nrf2 by this special chemical bond. But then when the right toxin, free radical, oxidant comes along, it breaks that bond. And so it releases Nrf2, and eventually Nrf2 makes it into the nucleus where it binds to a specific sequence in our DNA and actually turns on these hundreds and hundreds of different antioxidant and detoxification genes. But we know if we can apply these principles of nutrigenomics and utilizing the right nutrients. So here we obviously have the 5 ingredients that's found in the US formula, but also 3 other ingredients that we have in some of our international formulas. We know that we can utilize those nutrients to target that protein, Nrf2, or flip that switch. And if we can do that, we can utilize or realize all of these different health benefits, right? So just simply put, I put neutralized, why we say we can reduce oxidative stress by 40% in 30 days. So if we come back to this schematic, and if this theory is right, that we can utilize these nutrients to activate Nrf2, what we should be able to do is measure those genes being turned on. So you can see there, kind of at the bottom of that schematic, it says gene expression, and there's two genes listed specifically. One's called NQO1 and the other one's called heme oxygenase, or HMOX1. So the names aren't important, but these are genes known to be regulated or activated by Nrf2. And believe it or not, it is actually really easy to measure whether or not a gene has been turned on. So these are great, sensitive, really reproducible studies to do. And so when we go to the laboratory and we put the formula for Protandim Nrf2 and look at whether or not these Nrf2 genes have been activated, sure enough, in 24 hours, we see a 40% and a 50% increase in these two genes that are known to be regulated by Nrf2. So these were some of the first studies that I embarked on when I was at LifeVantage. I think I wanted to see for myself in my own hands that Protandim Nrf2 Synergizer was working as advertised. And sure enough, so in my own hands, I was able to reproduce all of what we've seen throughout those 31 research studies. So now if we kind of focus our attention back to Protandim Nrf1 Synergizer, the protein Nrf1 is working very similarly to Nrf2, and that is it's anchored to a specific protein somewhere inside of the cell. When the right stimulus comes along, Nrf1 gets released, goes into the nucleus, binds to its specific sequence of DNA, and will activate genes that are known to be regulated by this protein Nrf1. So the same philosophy, we know we can utilize nutrients to activate these switches, right? In this case, the Nrf1 pathway. And then we can get all of these health benefits centered around the mitochondria. So we can get that energizing effect. And so sure enough, when we go back to the laboratory, we can put these nutrients on these cells. We can then monitor over time these genes that are turned on as a result of activating Nrf1. And so in this case, in the lower right-hand corner, you see there's another protein that's called Nrf1, and then another protein called PGC1 alpha that's responsible for that mitochondrial turnover and biogenesis. And so sure enough, when we go to the lab, put these nutrients on cells, we can see a 61 and 69% increase in these genes. So again, real proof that these products are working as advertised. Coming to Protandim NAD Synergizer, exact same story, right? We can leverage nutrigenomics, use the right nutrients to target the right switches inside of the cell. In this case, the NAD biosynthetic pathway. So we want to make more NAD inside of the cell. And if we can do that, we can realize a whole host of health benefits, or simply put, that revitalization that occurs by increasing NAD levels. Just to get into NAD a little bit deeper, and then we'll talk about the synergy of the three together. But just to kind of refresh everyone's memories, that what we're trying to do is increase this molecule called NAD. And we know when we can do that, we can activate this family of proteins that's known as the sirtuins. And these sirtuins are incredibly important in regulating what they call survival or anti-aging genes. And so things like autophagy, which is really a fancy way to say cellular cleanup. Sometimes inside of our cells, whether it's from free radicals or oxidants, proteins or other cellular structures can get so damaged that they can't be turned over and recycled by the normal machinery of the cell. So under these stressful situations, the cell will activate these autophagy pathways. That's this really aggressive cellular cleanup. So its job is to go through and really clean up all the garbage that's inside of the cell. And it turns out to be incredibly important, especially when we're talking about the longer lived cells in our bodies, like the cells in our brain, the cells of our heart, etc. But we also know that sirtuins are involved in regulating a healthy inflammatory response. They're related to cardiovascular health. In fact, sirtuins have been shown to regulate at least 7 key anti-aging pathways. So just an incredibly important family of proteins that we want to activate. And we do that by increasing NAD levels. The problem is we know that as we age, the activity of these sirtuins actually decreases by as much as 60%. So the very things that are going to keep us as healthy for as long as possible is also the thing that's working against us as we get older. So kind of building off of that simple cartoon, what we want to do is activate, like I said, this compound called NAD. And it's a pretty interesting story in how they discovered these sirtuins and that they were regulated by NAD. And that's from the story of caloric restriction. And caloric restriction is this phenomenon where if you reduce calories, right, caloric intake by between 40 to 60%, they see an incredible life extension of about that same 40 to 60%. And this phenomenon was first realized and characterized in just simple yeast. They could count the number of cell divisions that these yeast were doing. When they limited those calories by that 60%, they noticed that these yeast actually lived longer. So, oh my gosh, what's going on? So what they did then was followed up with a bunch of genetic studies. And so genetic studies where they could knock out the activity of these sirtuin proteins. So when they would do these genetic manipulations, knock sirtuins out of the system, restrict these calories, you would lose that increase in lifespan. So the conclusion there is these sirtuin proteins are absolutely essential and responsible for this extension of lifespan through caloric restriction. So then these scientists turned their attention specifically to how these sirtuin enzymes work. And what they found is that this compound, NAD, is absolutely required for the activity of this protein. And it also turns out what was happening when you are restricting calories by so much, you actually increase the concentration of NAD, thus activating these sirtuin proteins and getting all of the positive health benefits that come from activating sirtuins. Is that clear, Ryan? I know that was kind of a long-winded story with the sirtuins, but what they have found, because you can increase NAD levels by restricting calories, they found that the activity of these sirtuins increased by about 94%. So real strong proof, restricting calories, increased NAD, and that increased NAD actually significantly activates this family of proteins. So when we go back into the cell and we ask the questions, okay, how does the cell make NAD? I showed the schematic last week, but our cell can make NAD from one of two ways. One is from scratch, from the amino acid tryptophan, and then the other is a recycling pathway. And it turns out it's this recycling pathway that's the most important to keep these NAD levels replenished and high. So we turned our attention to this recycling part of this NAD pathway. And it turns out there are these two enzymes that are responsible for the production of NAD. So what we wanted to do was come up with nutrients that could activate those enzymes so that we could ultimately make more NAD and not have to put ourselves on the worst diet you'd ever be on in your entire life. And so sure enough, when we look at those compounds that are in Protandim NAD Synergizer, we know we can activate those two enzymes, right? The NAD switch, and we can get all of these different health benefits that come from that mental focus and concentration, mood, motivation to go exercise, and then a lot of cardiovascular health effects like you would imagine from activating these sirtuins. So we turned our attention back to those two enzymes treated with the formula for Protandim NAD Synergizer, and we see an 11 and 12% increase in the expression of those two enzymes. Okay, but how does that translate into NAD levels and the sirtuin activity? Well, what we were able to find, remember, caloric restriction, 94%. And by treating with Protandim NAD Synergizer, we were able to basically completely restore what they have seen in those caloric restriction studies. And then, Ryan, we got into that kind of precursor conversation last week with NAD. So what do the various precursors do when it comes to sirtuin activity? So we threw those compounds into our experiments, and we saw that they only had a very modest 2% increase. So really strong proof of concept that activating these two enzymes in NAD biosynthetic pathway has real effects inside of the cell, activates these sirtuin activities so that we can realize these health benefits. So I think that's a pretty strong and compelling story in itself. But just for fun, we asked ourselves the question, was there any synergy between the three products? So when we look at one product individually versus looking at all three of them together, what would we find? And based on some early scientific rationale, we had every reason to believe that there would be this synergistic effect by utilizing these three products, looking at those same endpoints. So this would have been the data that I showed you before. After we put Protandim Nrf2 Synergizer on the cells, we see that 40 and 50% increase in those two genes. But when we treat with all three products, we see that first gene jumps up to being expressed at 73%, or a further 82% increase in its expression. And we see something very similar with the other gene, but this time up to a 1600% synergistic effect. Just absolutely massive. When we look at these two Nrf1 genes, so there's that 61 and 69% I showed you before. But when we look at all three products together, that jumps up to 84%, or a further 40% increase, versus another 118% increase when we look at all three products, for a 71% further increase in those genes. And then when we come back to the NAD genes, remember that 11 and 12%, but utilizing all three products together, that number jumps to 127%, or almost a 1000% synergistic increase. And then almost a 2000% increase when we look at all three products together for that second NAD synthesizing gene. So some really strong evidence that utilizing these three products together, if you love any one of those Protandim products singly, you should be leveraging the Synergizer to get even better effects out of that one product that you might love. So that really is the power of synergy. And I think you've probably heard me say it a few times, but based on all of this research that we have done, we were able to file 4 patents last year around this whole synergistic effect of leveraging the Protandim family of products together. So it's just a really, really cool scientific study, and something I was proud to be a part of right when I joined LifeVantage.
Man, I don't have any words right now, Brian. I mean, it's mind-boggling to see, the data, all of the science in front of us with regards to graphs and the visualization of how important this is. And my mind automatically transitioned to, if I was to take $1, right, and know that I could invest that into this particular stock or that stock or that stock, why wouldn't you put it in the Synergizer and get a 2000% or 1000% return? So I don't know, it just kind of hit me just now where I'm like, why wouldn't anyone and everyone, specifically LifeVantage distributors, be on the Synergizer no matter what? They also get to max out the comp. For the brand new person that's looking at this as a consumer or a customer, like, the data is there. Like don't short the amount of money you're investing into your own body. Get the maximum out of it with regards to the return. And man, I just think it's incredible that data, that science that we can lean on. We now have 4. Now, is this 4 additional patents from what we currently have now?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. When, and do we know when those will be, available for us to see, or they give us some insight?
Yeah, we're actually hoping. So I should say they were filed 2 years ago. We filed some updates, amendments, January of last year. So we're getting into that kind of 2 to 3 year range since we've filed those patents. So we hope it's soon, but it's just we're at the mercy of the U.S. Patent Office, and sometimes they go through pretty quickly, and sometimes it can take a number of years.
Man, that's incredible. One of the questions that I had that came up, Brian, was this: is in that recycling process, is there a time like for example, if I consume the product for 1 month, and let's say for some reason I travel, I get out of my rhythm, I forget to take it, I don't take it. Let's say I go off the product for 5 weeks. Is there a rebuilding of the recycle process? And then once it is at its fullest capacity, as far as the consumption, how does that look as far as a ramp up thing? Is it a 24-hour and I'm back recycling the same way I was if I was on it for 3 months straight?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you're definitely going to lose some of that synthetic capacity, but it will build itself back up when you do get back on the products. And I'd have to go back and look, but I had mentioned the human clinical study data that we're going to have coming out sometime this month, I believe, or early next month. So the timing will be really worked out there, where they were able to see increases in NAD. But my guess is it would take another couple of weeks to build up that capacity again.
Okay. So all the more to just stay consistent, stay in the rhythm, don't do that yo-yo effect where the body's, trying to recover and then get back to its full capacity. Incredible information. Let me ask you, any new news with regards to any of this that's come out that we'll be going through at EA this next month?
I don't know if anything necessarily new. I think we're just waiting for these human research studies to come out, and so we can really shout from the rooftops the power of this product.
So by far, Synergizer is the way to go for any LifeVantage distributor.
I just love the data. Like I mentioned early on in that talk, I've been in this industry for 13 years. And to see that synergistic effect was just absolutely incredible. In fact, I'll tell you a story. When we went to the patent attorneys to be able to put the patents together, they looked at the data and thought, oh my gosh, this is real. Because you can imagine they sit in a lot of meetings where marketing departments are applying for these patents just to apply for them. So a company can say patent pending on a patent that most likely will never, ever be granted. But for those few years, they can say patent pending, patent pending. But when these patent attorneys looked at it, they were like, oh my gosh, this is legitimate and real. And we absolutely need to get all these patents around being able to protect that technology and that information.
Man, I think like if you just kind of look at the screen, everyone's clapping, there's chills going on. And to me, what that sounds like to me, and how I kind of, in process that, I guess, in my heart and mind, is, man, we have a beautiful, healthy future for all of us. I mean, this is something that we've really stressed as a message to the field and a message to the world, is that this is a safe place to be really, really proud of with regards to our product, the science behind it, the patents behind it. It isn't like a little trophy case. Those things really do mean something that allow us to increase the belief and really share this story the way that we need to. And so that's incredible. I know the line's blowing up, Brian, with regards to human studies. Like normally you see a lot of companies in the MLM space or so forth do studies outside of a human study. What is the significance of a human study? There is way more into a human study than any other study, correct?
Well, absolutely. And, one thing I invoked when I started here was just no more animal research at LifeVantage. So just vowed that we would only work in cell culture and then in humans. Because what's ultimately the point? I mean, how many mice or rats do you guys have on subscription? I'd guess not many. So we're not marketing to fruit flies or worms or mice or rats. So why not just go directly to people and see how the effects are? You know, there's pros and cons with every experimental model. They definitely have their place. You want to leverage the right experimental model for any study that you're doing to make sure you're using the right model to answer the right questions. But we're trying to improve human health. So why not just go do studies in humans? That's how I feel.
Man, no, that's an exciting thing for us. I mean, the more studies. Now, the question is also, and the challenge is, and I hear this from your mouth all the time, you don't want to geek out too much or get too scientific. And a lot of our distributors, they do find a lot of comfort in that, and that's fine. However you want to express that belief and express the story. But I think what you've done a really amazing job on, Brian, is really breaking it down in a layman's term for us to be able to share this very effectively for the everyday consumer, the masses, to be able to say, aha, okay, I understand what's going on. You know what I mean? We've got oxidative stress being taken care of. We've got energy, which is the mitochondria, the engine of the cell. And then all of a sudden we have these factories being built inside the cell to what? You know, accommodate all of the byproduct and burn it faster, quicker, stronger, and more efficiently. And so when you look at all of that, to me, it comes all the way back to, if I was to take $100,000 and invest it in this, or this, why wouldn't you put it in the Synergizer and get a 2,000% return? And our body is no different. If not, it's actually more important. Obviously, we don't want to be the richest person in the retirement home, right? Doesn't matter. So here we are. But man, you've done a brilliant job tying a bow around this. Any last things that you would be that you want to share with us? Any last stories? What's the vision of your department as far as continuing to be the leader of nutrigenomics? That is a massive, massive disruptive vertical. In fact, it's one of the top 12 disruptive verticals that have been chosen moving forward in our time today, 2022 up to 2025 and beyond. So I find it really interesting that disruptive technology and a disruptive vertical, that nutrigenomics is a part of that, and we get to lead it.
Yeah, we're going to continue to be the pioneers and the leaders in nutrigenomics. There's no question. So you can expect to see more nutrigenomic products coming out in the future. Absolutely. You know, but at the end of the day, just to kind of sum up the mission of the Department of Research and Development, is we just want to develop products that are going to make people as healthy as possible. And I would just encourage everyone on the call, be proactive in your health. I mean, it's a terrible thing when your health gets stripped away and we start going down that rabbit hole. So it's just that stupid old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It really, really is true when it comes to our health. You know, we're an incredibly complex machine. We give our bodies the tools it needs to kind of keep self-repairing itself. Wonderful. But when that complicated machine starts to break down, it can be really hard to get it put back together again. So just encourage everyone to be proactive in your health.
So 1 is good, 2 is great, 3 is life-changing. Is that true?
That's what I meant to say, Ryan. Yeah, exactly.
Well, buddy, we love you. We appreciate you. You are a true partner with us with regards to sharing this amazing story, this gift, LifeVantage. A lot of people have no clue, guys. I promise you, if you walked out your rooms, walked out of your houses right now and talked to 100 people and said the word LifeVantage, Protandim, Nrf1, Nrf2, NAD, Synergizer, 100 of them would have no clue what you're even talking about. And so be bold, be confident, believe in what we are doing. We are blazing a massive trail. And when you give time, and we've got thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of distributors sharing that message daily, you got to think about the geometric growth. We will grow as a company. We are at the right time, at the right place. And I'm honored to be a part of this with so many great people. I love seeing your faces, but more importantly, it's the new person that is on this call. This is for you. We've talked to, Greg and I talked to a few of them this morning. They got invited by a few of our distributors to just listen in and understand. And man, that is why we've created this call, is not only to increase our own belief, but to share that vision and that story in this company with the world. And we're doing that. So well done. Double check the YouTube channel. We'll have the recording up. And then I'm excited to announce next week's topic. I'll dissect that with Brian, and we'll get that out to every single person. Let me ask you, Dr. Dixon, looking at your schedule, next Wednesday at noon, are we confirmed, or do we need to chat offline?
Here, let me look really quick.
I just put you right on the spot, buddy. I appreciate you letting me do that.
Yeah, we can do next Wednesday at noon.
Done. There you guys have it. Noon Mountain Standard Time, Wednesday. We'll send out the topics. We'll get the links out early so you guys can market this all week, and then default back to the recordings. You guys can use those to share this message. Dr. Dixon, thank you. Keep blazing the trail, buddy. We couldn't do this without you. So have a great afternoon, and we'll sign off and let you guys get back to your busy lives. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.